So, Jojo, can you dance? Dance, dance, dance. Dance, dance, dance. So, if you're a client of mine, chances are you probably know these first few things. What we're going to do is go over some animal movements or some primal movements. There's a lot of, if you go on YouTube or some of these, fitness things on Instagram or whatever, they do a lot of these primal flow, blah, blah, blah type things. I like some of them for the sheer fact that they are good for your brain. People don't realize that when you use, one of the best reasons to train and exercise is because it helps your brain. And when you use, there's movements called cross crawl. Here we'll call them something else. But when you use the opposite sides of your body doing different things, it causes the hemispheres of the brain to communicate with each other. The band of nerves that separates the hemispheres is called the corpus callosum. And it actually causes that divide, if you want to call it, to get smaller. Those band of nerves actually communicate, and you create new relays between the left and the right hemisphere of the brain. The new science is called neuroplasticity. So you're creating new pathways for your brain to communicate with each other. So these things are great. They're very, very simple. I'm going to try to walk across the screen here. But essentially, you're going to start on your hands and knees, and you're crawling. Okay, and the opposite arm and the opposite leg have to move at the same time. All right. The tricky part for most people that I've worked with is going backwards. Okay, opposite leg and opposite arm move at the same time. To add some fitness to it, very, very simple. Get on your hands and knees, dig your toes in. So get your heels or your knees off the ground, only about an inch. Very, very, very short. I guess my cat wants to join me. Very short distance off the ground. Now we're adding a fitness component to it. Again, opposite arm, opposite leg, move at the same time. Okay, it's not a bear crawl. Typically with my clients, we'll go, 15, 20 feet. And then I'll tell them to hit the rewind button, and opposite leg, opposite arm, move at the same time. This is extremely good for the brain. Again, if you can't figure it out, or if you start to move and you kind of get off course and you're doing the same side, just get your knees back on the ground and start crawling. And then when you get comfortable, dig those toes in, lift your knees up slightly, and we're walking. So some people call this a cross crawl. I call it a forward traveling beast. Now we're going to do a sideways traveling beast. So setup's the exact same. Again, I'm going to dig my toes into the ground. I'm going to lift my knees up just enough to slide a piece of paper under. So they're just barely off the ground, but my muscles are now engaged and I have the support. And again, it's opposite arm, opposite leg, opposite arm, opposite leg. Keeping a neutral spine, back's parallel with the ground, opposite arm, opposite leg, opposite arm, opposite leg. Okay? So that's the sideways traveling beast. So we have a forward traveling beast, we have a sideways traveling beast. What's up, Joe? What's up, Tiff? So now we're going to go sideways traveling ape. I love this one as well. Very primal. You're going to get kind of in like a catcher stick, like a baseball catcher, how they are. You're going to plant your hands to the ground just outside of the direction you want to move. So just outside of that leg. And you're going to land with the trail leg first. Okay? So I usually do this again about 15 feet. Now I'm keeping my heels off the ground and staying in that baseball catcher stance, so to speak, but you can land and go to your flat feet if you can and get in that full deep squat position. And I'm saying that only because we're going to talk about that in a second. But I'm just reaching my hands outside of my my base here. Okay? So that's a sideways traveling ape. And again, you can take this for distance. You can add things like I mentioned earlier, the primal flow type stuff. There's some fun things you can do. You can land and kick the foot out. You can do all these sorts of things and hands around and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, that's for another time. You can look that up on your own. So forward traveling beast, sideways traveling ape. those three things. I'm actually getting a sweat already, and it's only been a few minutes. This will get your body warmed up. It will get the brain warmed up. And again, it's really good if you're someone who's older. The fitness side of it might not be there for you. You might not be able to lift your knees up off the ground. You can simply crawl, okay? Knees are on the ground, crawling backwards. You can do it sideways. Opposite arm, opposite leg, okay? Very simple. Regarding that squat, I have a client that struggles with getting to that full deep squat position. And so what I have him doing is every day, for about 10 minutes, I want him every day to be in a deep squat position. So he'll hang on to, at home if you have a chair, let me grab a chair, but you can hang on to anything you want, anything that helps you. If you have a TRX, if you have, if you imagine the door is like this and you can grab both of the door handles and go all the way down. But anything that's sturdy enough to hold you, the chair might not be for some of you, but get into a deep squat position and hold it for as long as you can. Side of the couch, okay? So this is taking up a lot of my support, but a lot of people's nervous systems, they basically forget how to squat, okay? The brain will, if you don't go to a range of motion, which is one reason why I encourage full range of motion in all my movements, but if you don't go into that full range of motion, your nervous system basically shuts down that range of motion. It's a protective mechanism, it's a calorie saving mechanism, it's all these sorts of things, but it's also, you basically, if you squat halfway or a quarter way, you're basically telling the nervous system, I don't need that other half of that movement. We're going to conserve and we're going to protect and take some preventative measures. So just tell your brain it's okay to be in this position. Tell your knees, tell your ankles, tell your hips it's okay to be in this full flexed position. And so with that in mind, I have a lot of people who have flat feet, who have fallen arches. All right, so we're going to talk about arches here for a second. And these are some really good ones. What's up, Vincent? What's up, Anil? So a lot of people have fallen arches. All right. Most of you remember that song as a kid, the knee bone's connected to the hip bone, the blah, blah, blah bone, all that. So it might not be the arch's fault. They might just be the victim and not the culprit. I use that term a lot. A lot of times there's a problem, say the thyroid, but the thyroid isn't the culprit. The thyroid is just the victim of something else acting out. Same thing with the arches. So if you just stand there, and you can do this on your own there, but if you're just standing, if you just drop your knees in, you'll watch your arches drop. Okay, you'll see your arches actually start to collapse. So it might be the hip musculature. Okay, yesterday in my workout we talked about glute medius and how the glute medius holds the femur in place, and it helps to stabilize not just the hip, but also the femur, the thigh bone. So if your glutes are weak, your thigh bones might be caved in and collapsed, and that might create a potential arch. So we need to create strong glutes, everything in structural balance, which is what we talk about in my gym. But let's tackle the arches specifically. One thing we need to do is I like to stretch the fascia on the bottom of the foot. So I use a golf ball. If you have a lacrosse ball, that's fine, but if I wish I had one here, I don't. But I step on the golf ball and I roll, just like you would with the foam roller. I roll very, very slowly, until I find it's actually good. I have one of Joy's wooden balls here. But I'm gonna roll really, really slow until I find a spot that doesn't feel good. It kind of makes my face kind of cringe a little bit. And I'm gonna hold it there. I'm gonna put some weight in. I wanna be about a 7 out of 10 on a pain level. And what we're trying to do is release that knot or that tension spot in the fascia. So the way I explain it is if I twist this knot up in my shirt, is it just creating local tension in the shirt, or is it creating tension all throughout the shirt? It's creating tension everywhere. So when I release that knot, I can then release tension throughout the whole webbing of the fascia. because it's usually the fascia that creates restrictions. It's not muscle. So again, I'm rolling around just like a massage therapist. When they find that spot, they're going to dig in there and they're just going to hold their thumbs there for a minute. They're going to hold their elbows there for a minute, and they're just really going to wait until that pressure point releases. Okay? So those trigger points are what we're looking for. When we find one, we're going to leave the ball there. We're going to let that trigger point relax. It might take a minute, it might take 2 minutes. I usually go 2 to 3 spots on one foot, and then we'll go to the other foot. Again, we'll find a trigger point or two. When we find one, we sit on it, we leave it there. We want to put enough pressure on there to where there's pain, but yet still not so much to where we can't stay relaxed. So if we tense up, then that fascia will tense up and it won't open up. We also need to do that throughout the calf and the lower ankle. So we can do this on the ground same way. And we're not going to go through it, but you want to find those spots. Again, if fascia is connected to the entire web, the problem with plantar fasciitis, or the problem with those trigger points pulling, and if you can imagine the fascia as a web pulling and flattening that arch, we need to release that. But it could also be up here in the ankle and the calf. Okay. Another thing we need to work on, an often overlooked muscle, is the anterior tibialis. So if you find the shin bone on the front of your leg, go to the outside, put your fingers there, and just lift your toes up. Okay? You're going to feel that anterior tibialis work. That anterior tibialis, obviously, because I'm lifting the toes up, that anterior tibialis dorsiflex, or closes that angle, brings the toes up to the shin. All right? Because it comes down here in the shin bone, and then the tendon actually wraps around the foot and connects underneath the foot. So if you can imagine that muscle being here, well, I'll show you on this side. It's here on the outside of my shin, and then the tendon comes underneath and catches here underneath the bottom of the middle of the arch. If that muscle is weak, the foot will collapse. I don't know if you can see that, but it will kind of cave in, all right? And when that anterior tibialis is strong, it's going to invert the foot. It can also help to lift up the arch. So one way I work on the anterior tibialis, very simple movement. You don't need any equipment. You're going to lean against the wall. My feet are about a foot, maybe 2 off the wall. I'm on my feet are flat. My shoulders and head are against the wall. I'm going to lift my toes up. I'm going to hold it for about 3-4 seconds, and then I'm going to lower it for about 3-4 seconds. Okay? Lift to the toes. 3, 2, 1. We talked about tempo yesterday. Tempo is really important. 3, 2, 1. So this is strengthening, like we talked about. The anterior tibialis lifts the foot, or lifts the toes, I'm sorry. So simply leaning against the wall and applying a different angle puts a little more gravity, if I can use that expression, making your anterior tibialis work a little bit harder. And that's going to strengthen that anterior tibialis. It's going to allow your arch to help be restored. It's also going to allow your ankle to dorsiflex more, to bend more. It's going to help you get into that deep squat position like we talked about, okay? That ankle bone, and you'll feel that a lot of people, when I get them holding onto the rings at the gym, or holding onto a TRX, or just grabbing the squat rack post, and they go down to a squat, and so they're supported, they always say, oh, the front part of my shin, I feel the front part of my shin, it kind of hurts. It's because the anterior tibialis is weak, and we need to strengthen it. One other thing I wanted to show you, and I've seen this done different ways, so if there's a physical therapist listening, be happy to, totally fine with you jumping in and correcting me on this. You can put a towel under your foot if you need, reference. But what I'm doing is I'm basically making a fist with my foot. Now, obviously, I can't close and make a total fist with my foot, but again, if you put a towel under, you'll feel and see that reference point. You're trying to pull the towel in underneath, and you're squeezing the arch of your foot, okay? So I've seen it done like that, where you pull the toes in. The other way I've seen it done is without pulling in the toes, and it's a lot more difficult, but I'm, again, trying to lift the arch without pulling the toes in. And you can see I'm actually better on this foot with it. But I can lift the arch of the foot without pulling the toes in. All right. Sister movement of that is if you lift the toes, like just lift them up as high as you can. Remember, the anterior tibialis creates that dorsiflexion, but you're also going to engage and lift the arch by lifting the foot, or lifting the toes, sorry. So, what you want to do is lift the toes. You'll feel and even see that arch lift up. I don't know if you can see it on the video, but when I lift my toes, keeping the ball of my foot flat, the arch lifts up. So you're going to lift the toes, hold the arch in place, and then slowly lower the toes while keeping the arch up. So I lift the toes, I hold it for 3 to 5 seconds, and then holding the arch up, I'm going to slowly lower the toes. Why is this important? Not just to squat, but you have the toes of the foot, the ball of the foot, the arch of the foot, the heel of the foot. The arch is not load bearing. There should be no load being down on the arch of the foot. Okay, it's more like a shock absorber. The weight on your feet should be on your toes, your ball of your foot, and your heel. If you think about your body, and everybody does all these sorts of things to improve these different muscles, the feet are the only part of your body that is touching the floor or touching the ground. Whether you walk, run, go upstairs, doesn't matter. The feet are the only part of your body that touches the ground. It's like the wheels on a car. You could have a Ferrari, you could have the greatest engine in the world, aerodynamic and everything. But if you have crappy tires, if they're ball tires, your performance is really going to suffer. And so with poor feet, it creates an immediate unstable foundation. And up the kinetic chain, things will potentially break down. So we need to take care of our feet. If we have fallen arches, if we have collapsed arches, we need to restore them. So these are a couple ways to do that. You will potentially save your back. You will potentially save your hips. You will potentially save your knees just by focusing on those feet. Again, it's the only thing that's touching the ground when you're walking and running. So that's it for today. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Leave a comment if there's anything you want to see. I'll be happy to accommodate if I can. Hope you guys are staying safe, enjoying your time home. Make sure you're breathing. Make sure you're working on your breathing practice. We talked about it yesterday. We're going to do more of that tomorrow. And enjoy your time with your families. We'll see you.